And I continue to trust that your decisions will inure to the benefit of all of us in this House and the people of Guyana whom we serve. Mr. Speaker, let me also congratulate all of the MPs who serve in this honorable House, who have been elected from the list of electors that were submitted to the Elections Commission and who now have the opportunity to serve the people in the legislative branch of government. I more particularly want to thank the MPs on this side, my own MPs, who throughout the last 5 days of debate have done an excellent job. The people of Guyana will be proud of you, as I am indeed very proud of you. Mr. Speaker, before I get into what I really want to say, I must offer some brief remarks on what the last speaker said. It is unfortunate that he did not choose to come into these chambers and prattle as he did, And so, Mr. Speaker, we really wish he would have been here, because those statements which he made are statements which certainly must require some response. Mr. Speaker, I chose this afternoon to take a different path. Not the path of confrontation as the last speaker did, the path of threatening people about investigations which he will do. That is not going to affect us. It's not going to affect the stridency. And my friend over there is accustomed to that place. He's been here already, so it's not a problem. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this afternoon we are looking at some very important matters in the life of this country. And I want to commend the staff of the Budget Office who have done a fairly good job in presenting this budget. Mr. Speaker, I want to also commiserate with the family of Joel and Isaiah Henry and Harish Singh. Their gruesome death diminishes all of us. When a Guyanese life is lost anywhere, a Guyanese life is lost everywhere. And we cherish and we value the life of every Guyanese. More so my friend over there who I had to save in the 2015 elections. Mr. Speaker, the budget in some regards identify priorities of our time. And I will name those priorities as public security, social cohesion, and COVID-19 pandemic. All of these require, in my view, Mr. Speaker, a national response in order that our country can progress and prosper. Unfortunately, in Budget 2020, while the writers recognize that this is an important priority, they gave it low priority over the needs of the ordinary people, but compensating their political friends and giving rewards for those who help them. They have sought to compensate their political base and those whom they wish to target, while neglecting the people and the areas they perceive to be coalition support base. Mr. Speaker, this is a raw budget. This is one which, by the way the resources are allocated, can only serve to further divide us. Mr. Speaker, how do you explain in 47 days in office, you have dismissed over 100 persons, mainly Afro-Guyanese and single-parent women? How do you explain that? How does the gentleman who spoke before me, that speaks about cohesion, how does he explain that? That is what we need to know. Mr. Speaker, many persons who are well skilled in the positions where they had were actually removed just like that in one fell swoop. We spoke about Dr. Adams. We spoke about Amanzo Walton Desir. We spoke about many other persons who are well qualified and who are the best persons for these jobs, but are removed simply because there's a perception that they support the APNUAFC. Mr. Speaker, our intention has always been for the good of this country, and that is why all of our budgets have always been about the good life. But Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Agriculture stands here in this honorable house and says that they're going to downsize the headquarters of Gaisuko because there are too many people there, and in the same breath, he is talking about reopening estates. When you send home all these technical officers, who are the ones that are going to do the studies? Who are the ones that are going to fix the estates? What sense does that make? It's backward thinking. And then at the same time, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, you are giving to the Gaisuko $600 million to deal with salaries. Mr. Speaker, is this not the same Gaisuko workers that we actually gave all of the benefits when they left? But Mr. Speaker, this here, this Artichon Conference Center is what dispelled all doubts. All doubts were dispelled. And so, Mr. Speaker, when these boxes started opening one after the other, this is where the frost started jumping out so like crapo. The jump also, jumping also, all these different things. Statement of poll that they're asking about. Let me make a point on that, Mr. Speaker, since the Honorable Heckler over there is talking about statements of poll. That, Mr. Speaker, this party over here had created statements of polls and circulated it on the internet, even before people had voted. even before, dated the 28th of February, and circulated, or 29th of February, whatever it was, circulated. Are you talking about statements of polls? So, Mr. Speaker, when the recounts were done, it was clear to all of the world that this was what we call the epicenter of electoral fraud, the east coast of Demerara. The epicenter of electoral fraud. You had at least 47 boxes with over 11,500 votes, for which there was no statutory document. People who come out from the grave, like my friend over there, to vote. And we have the evidence of the death certificates. People who were not in Ghana at that time, who were overseas residents and voted. So many other issues, Mr. Speaker, that the People's Progressive Party ought to hide their heads in shame. In shame. And the Honorable Member Barjagio talking about people being sorry and all of that. He should be the one that is sorry, that he's taking sat on the will of the Guyanese people by fraud and sitting there in office. Everybody knows it. It came out right here. The report of the Chief Elections Officer into the recount showed that the tabulation, the matrix of the tabulation had one figure, and then of course there was the actual, the issues which arose. And that when you were to get the credible votes, you had to then take out from the bulk that was here called the matrix or the tabulation, and to take out all of these issues which arose here. Mr. Speaker, as one of the members of the APNUAFC team, I met right here in this center, in this room, with the chairman of the Elections Commission and her chair and the commissioners. And we raised all of these matters. We asked that they inquire into them. They said, yes, we're going to give you what they call a basket of issues, and that they were going to deal with them. I personally wrote and asked that we get a position on these matters before the end of the recount. We were told yes. We were told yes. Mr. Speaker, the chairman and our commissioners agreed that these issues which we were raising, that they were accurate and that they will be dealt with. But then what happened? All sorts of circulation things start happening right here. Right here. Right here. I'm glad you know it. Bandits. That's what it was. And so, Mr. Speaker, on one afternoon, when everybody agreed that these 11,000 something votes got to be packed, by the next morning, it changed. And that these things are going to park them with the drive-in. They drive straight into the rest of the vote. So, Mr. Speaker, the 233,000 or so votes that were awarded to the PPP included all of these different things. And so you know, you are sitting on a time bomb. You are sitting on a time bomb. The petitions have been filed. The petitions have been filed. And so enjoy your little short tenure over there. I don't know if you can get back the next time over here, because you might be qualified. Right? But we will be over there once these things are done. Mr. Speaker, it is important that we understand in this country that the PPP were awarded 233,000 votes or thereabouts, and we 217,926, right? So you over there cannot operate as if 233,000 is equal to 100%, and that 217,000 is equal to 0.
Honorable member, I just want to caution about you over there. You know, we've been sticking with the parliamentary language of honorable members over there.
Mr. Speaker, I heard you, and I will refrain from that. But I would ask that you also caution the heckler over there. It's making it difficult for me to even hear you.
Order, order, order.
Please.
Are you just over there? You say nothing to do. You have to be here.
Mr. Speaker, let me continue that the political and security environment which now exists in Guyana requires political will and the budgetary allocations to help heal the wounds in our society. Mr. Speaker, the PPP decision to throw cold water on social cohesion, the appointment of Robeson Ben as Minister of Home Affairs, the reorganization of the Guyana Police Force, and to bring back senior officers who are discredited and place them in senior critical positions, the restructuring of the Guyana Defense Force, all point to a mindset that says the PPP will not be interested in any compromise in moving forward with the affairs of Guyana. That's what it says. It is either their way or the USA. That's what it is. It's either their way or the USA. Mr. Speaker, in one fell swoop, the Department of Social Cohesion was dismantled, and all of the skills which were acquired and developed over the last 5 years gone to waste. How will we solve, Mr. Speaker, the problems of society in this way? Mr. Speaker, the members of the other side must remember that, as I said, 233,000 is not 100%, and that 217,000 is not 0%. That in this House, we will wage an unrelenting struggle to ensure not only justice for the people, but equality in how the national patrimony of this country is allocated. Mr. Speaker, last Sunday, I had a chance meeting with President Irfan Ali at the funeral of Isaiah and Joel Henry. And he told me something there, which I would not repeat, so that Mr. Gentleman over there will go make a story out of it. He told me something, and my response to him was that we all in this country want peace. And I, as the leader of the opposition, am prepared to work with you for peace. But that equality and justice must also be given priority. President Ali agreed, and I trust that after his engagements with visiting dignitaries, there can be some meaningful dialogue in that matter. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we represent. We represent. And while in the language of some of my colleagues, they will ask, so I beg and I pray on all of this. These are just ways of speaking. But over here, we don't beg. We represent. Mr. Speaker, on the 2nd of September, when we were sworn in as MPs here, I made a public statement. And I said that we in the opposition will only support the government as it relates to the issues of sovereignty of our nation, public security, and any other matter we determine to be in the public interest. We said that. And so let there be no doubts about it. Any issue that has to do with the sovereignty of our state, any issue that has to do with public security of this country, and any issue that has to do with what we determine to be in the public interest, we will support. We will support. Yes, Mr. Speaker, we are prepared to work with this government on these issues. However, certain things have to be done on the government side. First of all, the killers of Joel and Isaiah Henry and Harris Singh must be brought to justice. Mr. Speaker, we demand an update on this investigation and a speedy trial of suspects. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Home Affairs last night balked at the opportunity to give this House a report on this most important matter. Any minister worth his salt would have been happy to give the National Assembly an update on a matter that is important as this. Any minister worth his salt. Mr. Speaker, secondly, the relentless and pointless investigation of the Office of the Elections Commission and the charges, the trumped-up charges brought against Valda Lawrence, Keith Lowenfield, Mingo and others of GCOM, that it should be withdrawn and discontinued. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, the oppressive police presence in some villages, particularly on the west coast of Berbice, should be reviewed. The presence appears to be oppressive in nature, and it should be reviewed. I'm not saying withdraw altogether, but they should review it. And the Prime Minister who's here, I know will take that matter up. Mr. Speaker, fourthly, constitutional reform must be treated as a priority. And Mr. Speaker, while that can take some time, we can examine a bipartisan bill that seeks to amend certain aspects of our electoral laws to take into consideration the findings of the CCJ and our own Court of Appeal and the High Court. Alternatively, Mr. Speaker, if we do not get buy-in from the government side on this matter, because we consider it so important, we will consult with civil society and bring a motion on the floor to that effect. Mr. Speaker, after the petitions are heard and determined, we want to say that we cannot go back to another elections with the same laws and with the same bloated list. It is a travesty. A travesty. We can't go back. We are prepared, Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House to support an upward review of allocations in this sector to facilitate these recommendations. We are prepared to do that. And so if the Minister of Finance wants to see how best we can sit and achieve that, achieve a sum put there to deal with constitutional reform, achieve a sum put there to deal with urgent matters which relate to the amendment of our electoral laws, we are prepared to work with you on that. Mr. Speaker, the second issue which I want to address in this budget is the question of the COVID-19 and the response to COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, our MPs on this side have done an excellent job in dealing with this matter. MP after MP did an excellent job in dealing with this COVID-19. The budget theme speaks to protecting our people in a COVID environment. But where in the budget did you place your emphasis? $150 million for frontline workers? Where is the plan, Mr. Speaker, that shows this budget is drafted upon a foundation that we are in a COVID environment? And therefore, every allocation in every sector must reflect that reality. If you're saying that this is the foundation of your budget, every sector must reflect it. Not just $150 million for frontline workers and $25,000 a household. That wouldn't work. The $25,000 will end up in Porterville 1, Porterville 2, and all these places. They're not entitled to it. The people who are vulnerable and require this, those are the ones that should get it. But this has been a lazy approach to budget arrangement. Lazy. Because in order for you to get to the vulnerable people, you have to do work. You have to do work which eliminates certain categories. You have to do all of that. We did all of that in the last 5 months of 2020. We did all of that. All of that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Ma, Mr. Region 3, gentlemen, you might have benefited from what we gave out too. Mr. Speaker, every allocation must be reflective of our current reality. Let me turn to the issue alluded earlier, which as a nation and the wider world, we are combating this global pandemic. Mr. Speaker, since the 2nd of August, COVID-19 has spiraled completely out of control in Guyana. And it has now reached catastrophic levels. Confirmed cases are skyrocketing. We have 100 and some, over 1,000 something now. Right? They are skyrocketing. Deaths are piling up. I think we're 62 or something like that. They're piling up. Where is the Minister of Health on this? Where is he missing in action? Mr. Speaker, on August the 2nd, when we left office, after managing this pandemic for 5 months since patient 0, on March 11th, there were 474 confirmed cases and 21 deaths from COVID-19. Today, a month and a half later, There are 1,958 confirmed cases and 58 deaths at that time, but I think it's 62 today. 62 deaths. For 5 months, Mr. Speaker, under the APNUAFC coalition government, there were 474 confirmed cases. And in 6 weeks of this woeful administration, we now gone to all this 1,958. More than 1,484 since we left in 6 weeks. So, Ms., how are you managing COVID-19? How are you doing that? It saddens and troubles me, Mr. Speaker, deeply to have to quote these horrific figures. Mr. Speaker, but these are the facts. The PPP, they're unconscionably playing Russian roulette with the lives of the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, after months of pontificating, boasting and lecturing, the PPP regime's management of the pandemic has been an unmitigated travesty. Guyanese are dying in record numbers. Guyanese are becoming infected in huge numbers. And Guyanese are living in fear all across this land. Whether it is the economy, security, or the pandemic, there's an absence of leadership on that side of the house. The Guyanese people have little confidence in you to manage the stewardship on this issue. Mr. Speaker, it is necessary to illustrate the stark difference in approach in our coalition government and the management of COVID-19 pandemic based on guesswork, politics, or profit, as it is in that case. Ours was based on sound science, sound structured approach, and a comprehensive whole of government plan. Mr. Speaker, every ministry of the government had to submit a plan of action to the Secretariat, of which I was the chief executive officer. And Mr. Speaker, this is how you deal with a national plan. Mr. Speaker, this is how you allocate resources to a problem that you consider to be at that level. But also, Mr. Speaker, all of what Mr. Speaker, on March the 14th, the Health Emergency Operations Center within the ministry region, every administrative region had to.
Comrade Speaker, I refer you to Standing Order 47, Order in the National Assembly. I made mention to you earlier that in terms of the key in which this assembly is going.
Mr. Speaker, this is how you deal with a national plan. Mr. Speaker, this is how you allocate resources to
being used in this house, sir, will only serve to degrade this 12th Parliament of this country under your watch. I refer you, sir, to Standing Order 47-2 for your guidance.
And over the last few hours, please let us keep our decorum and order in the National Assembly to a level that we will all be pleased with.
And activated
Issue directions under the Public Health Ordinance Act, authorizing the Minister of Health to take all appropriate measures to prevent
Assembly. I made mention to you earlier in terms of the decay in which this assembly is going, with the loud shouts and vile only serve to degrade this 12th parliament of this country under your watch. I refer you, sir, to Standing Order 47-2 for your guidance, please, sir.
And over the last few hours, please, let us keep our decorum and order in the National Assembly. So,
The President issued directions, President Granger issued directions under the Public Health Ordinance Act, authorizing the Minister of Health to take all appropriate also set up and working. And so, Mr. Speaker, we took a scientific, structured and planned approach to managing COVID. Authorizing the minister place a distancing from science, and the pandemic is running amok all over the country. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware structured and planned approach to managing COVID is a testimony to what is happening now in our country. Regrettably, only this week, Mr. Speaker, 14 members of staff of this national.
So I don't know if it's OBS doing something.
Over the country. Mr. Speaker, sad and unfortunate wildfire spread of the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, is entirely as a result of poor and incoherent management by the PPP. Recovery plan. There's absolutely not a single hint of a COVID recovery plan in this budget. Every one of our CARICOM neighbors who have presented budgets during this period hinged their budgets on a COVID recovery. Pandemic. We are operating in a new normal. And a $25,000 handout will only get you some groceries for the short term. They have ignored it. But what are our colleagues in the Caribbean doing, Mr. Speaker? Let's look a little bit abroad. They are pursuing structured COVID recovery. The Speaker, the Trinidad and Tobago Finance Minister, Com Imbert, in his budget presentation last month, stated have been anchored on an economic reform program designed within a they increase minimum wage. With the view to increasing the good life continues, the good life beckons, but all of it had a central theme which was called the good life, and that is called vision. Mr. Speaker, this budget unfortunately does not outline a vision. You cannot discern a path that we will take to
This budget, which was hurriedly done and without proper consultation, takes much of what former Minister Wilson Jordan would have done, a real Minister of Finance and his team, to have this matter dealt with. Mr. Speaker, our vision for the Guyanese people, entitled A Decade of Development 2020 to 2029, encompasses sound and professional study and widespread consultation. We have begun to set out that vision, which is now temporarily interrupted. That vision, Mr. Speaker, is based on four main pillars, namely the green state, the digital state, the education nation, and a petroleum state. Mr. Speaker, our MPs would have, throughout these last few days, given you elements of that vision, elements of those plans. Other people have done so. And Mr. Speaker, this is a document which is called A Decade of Development. And this, the green state. The green state. So, Mr. Speaker, our intention is to bring this Decade of Development document. We're going to make the white paper. And we will bring it in the National Assembly for consultation for it. Mr. Speaker, our work has already started. And shortly, we will come to this House with that white paper. Mr. Speaker, we believe that all people of Guyana have a right to say how they see their future and be part of the delineation of that developmental path. This is our approach, Mr. Speaker, an inclusionary one. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2020 falls short of the key objectives of enhancing social cohesion, guaranteeing the peace and security of our people, justice, and a practical methodological approach to dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. And for these reasons stated, Mr. Speaker, unless there's a willingness on the part of the government to review the allocation to the sectors I've identified, I cannot, on this side of the House, support this budget. Mr. Speaker, finally, let me say that it has been a tradition in this House, which the other side has insisted upon when we were in office. That is that the leader of the opposition is the penultimate speaker. And they insisted upon it. Mr. Speaker, this is not the case here. Added to this, Mr. Speaker, the vulgar abuse by the Minister of Public Works on the Honorable Amanda Walton Desir is unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, in light of those circumstances, we in the opposition side wish to thank you for listening to our presentations and for ruling in the way you did. My good friend, the Honorable Prime Minister, in deference to you, some of my colleague MPs have decided that they will stay. But generally speaking, because of the points I have raised, I cannot stay. I cannot sit anymore based on what has happened here. And then those MPs who consider it an honor to listen to the maiden speech of the Honorable Prime Minister, you are free to do so. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Thank you very much for your speech, and thank you for staying on track with respect to the time. Honorable Minister Teixeira, would you want to move the suspension of the standing order so we can go beyond 8 o'clock, thus the Prime Minister can proceed uninterrupted?
Mr. Speaker, just one moment. Mr. Speaker.
Works.
I ask of you that we consider the suspension of the standing orders that allows for the debate to conclude by 8 p.m. and we apply for an extension so we could work until the close of business. That is the government's application on this matter.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. We shall proceed beyond 8 o'clock. Honorable Prime Minister, you can thus proceed with your maiden presentation uninterrupted.
Mr. Speaker, first let me congratulate you on your ascension to the high office, Speaker of this House, after many years of public service to Guyana. I'd also like to take the opportunity to congratulate Mr. Leonard Schumann on his election to the office of Deputy Speaker. A signal achievement, an event that is important in the history of Guyana as we observe a month of celebration of our Amerindian brothers and sisters and their contribution to life, culture, and development of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded of a quotation by Tom Lee. And I quote,
to argue with a man who has renounced the use and authority of reason and whose philosophy consists in holding humanity in contempt is like administering medicine to the dead. End of quote.
Shoot back to the man, but you know the man already by. Hey, come on.